Legends of Runeterra, a game which deserves far more support from Riot than it's actually getting, is at it again, giving the worst and oldest champion designs in League of Legends interesting updates, and this time they're trying their hand with Janna. Now, I've made a whole ass video myself diving into her design and lore and imagining a couple of possible ways to update this character, and I'm pleased to see that Legends of Runeterra both agrees with me on some points and goes in a completely different and arguably more interesting direction on others. For example, Janna is transparent, fading into and out of existence as she uses her powers, which is an idea that I also had for my redesigns because, well, I think it's a pretty obvious idea. An avatar of the wind should probably have some level of transparency in their design because they're made of air. Second, her staff has been updated from the chunky nonsense that she has in League of Legends into something that's actually relevant to her thematics. Janna is identified with the blue bird, which sometimes appears her herald or messenger, and her staff is now patterned after birds' wings, which is a great update. It suits her a lot better. She's also got a bit of a tan now, which is cool given that she's originally a spirit from Shurima. It makes sense as part of her human form. I don't know if she's specifically meant to be a person of color here, but I would like her to be. I think that would be a great update for the character. Speaking of Shurima, she is much more identified with that region now, especially with all the gold in her design. Her green robes and that sun disk on her chest identifies her very closely with Shuriman aesthetics, and maybe a little bit too much, actually. Janna is at this point much more widely worshipped in Zaun as a goddess of fresh air, and I kind of wish that that would show on her design a bit more, like with some clockwork accessories, or if her gold color was burnished brass instead, just something to show visually that she is of Piltover and Zaun as much as she is of Shurima. The gold does do a good job of making her look divine, at least, and it is a nice looking contrast with that placid green dress that she's now wearing. Speaking of which, something that works beautifully about her new look is the flow of it. All these long, flowing, loose-fitting draped fabrics hanging and flying off of her. That is great. Her design needs things that can billow and flap in the wind to show, that the wind is present, that the wind is all around her all the time. Now, her new design has been desexualized a little bit, which is probably a good decision. I've said many times that Janna's original form would frankly be more interesting if it was just straight up naked, because that at least would be a bold way to portray a goddess, rather than the basic-ass fantasy pinup thing that she's got going on right now. But it really should be noted that Janna isn't a sexual character very much, and I don't think that being hot really does anything for her. It doesn't inform or add to her character, it just takes up space in the design. The new costume does have a nice long slit to let her thighs out to play, which is appealing to look at, I will admit, but the real improvement is the flow and the airiness and the billowing of it. Making a better Janna is a fairly low bar to clear, because her original design is the most generic sexy elf sorceress you can possibly imagine. But the Legends of Runeterra version of her is still a huge improvement. She is much more connected with her lore and her story now. Her nature as a wind goddess now actually shows in her design, and frankly, I'm just happy that old champions like her are getting any design attention from Riot at all nowadays. But let's turn our attention from the level 1 to her new Super Saiyan form in the level 2. Or, well, maybe it's more like her divine form. This is Janna when she unleashes her full elemental power, when she drops the pretense of being a person and reminds people that she is, in fact, the Runeterran equivalent of an actual god. Legends of Runeterra has put a bunch of work into developing a visual identity for divinities on Runeterra, by the way. In a previous expansion, we saw the geometric and abstract forms of areas darken, and ascended like Mihira, the aspect of justice, and it's clear that a bunch of that same aesthetic work has gone into crafting Janna's godlike form. And to start with, the mere fact that she has a godlike form now is a huge improvement. Imagine if Janna in League of Legends burst into this form when she uses her ultimate or after reaching level 16 or something like that. How much more would it feel like you are playing a wind god unleashing its powers? This is extremely cool as an idea and an incredibly good fit for what her character is supposed to be. Now, as for the actual execution of that form, well, I might have some criticisms. And the first is that while I like the be not afraid biblically accurate angel thing, she looks way too much like Kael and Mihira here. Like, Mihira and Kael crib from Christian aesthetics and Jewish angel mythology, and I think that should be their thing. Janna here looks like she could be a Kael follower or a lesser aspect of justice, and she just kind of loses both her Shuriman-ness and the sense that she's specifically an elemental spirit, a nature spirit. Janna's avatar is the bluebird specifically. That is her symbol, that is what sailors look to for fair winds on the sea, and it flies around with her even on Summoner's Rift. So I think it's weird to make her wings and feathers pure white. Like, yes, pure white and gold is great for evoking divinity, but that is Kael and Mihira's thing, and I think Janna would have looked much more unique, much more special, and much more like a nature spirit if her wings and feathers had been bright, iridescent blue, and if she had had, like, a pattern on her rather than just that flat, samey white. On that same note, Janna now has bird legs, which I think is cool, or, well, she has bird feet, really, and I can't help but think that they should have leaned into that a lot more. Make her a bird with 8 wings. Instead of a golden helmet, give her a bird head with a golden beak. Crib some inspiration from the Egyptian gods of our world, or the Pan-African gods for that matter. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if she looked more like a Shuriman Ascended, I think, because the whole point of Ascension was to make Shurimans look like their gods. They try to imitate her, and I think it would be cool if her design reflected that. So yeah, I have some mixed feelings about the level 2 here. At the baseline, it is a fantastic, absolutely S-tier idea to give her a form like this, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on in her design, but I do feel like it loses a lot of Janna's individuality, and it loses touch with her origins after her new base form did so much work to bring her back into harmony with them. Her hair spiraling up from her head in a spinning tornado shape though, that is really cool. Keep that rules.